Senator Cormann.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. Mr Acting Deputy President, at the request of Senator Minchin, I move that a motion for the introduction of a bill for an act to amend the Health Insurance Act 1973 to provide for the revival of certain medical services items should later items be disallowed, and consideration of that bill and business of the Senate notice of motion number 3 have precedence over all government business until determined. Mr Acting Deputy President, I mean, this is a highly unusual step for us to take. It is a highly unusual process. We grant you that. It is not something that we're doing lightly. However, the government's actions have forced us into a position where we had no other choice. Now, just to clarify in a few remarks that Minister Ludwig has made. He has suggested that this somehow is policy on the run and a last-minute consideration. Nothing could be further from the truth. We've been very determined for a long time. We've been very determined for a long time to make sure that we would stop this government from cutting the rebates for cataract surgery, because we think it would hurt patients, it would force them into the public system, into an already overburdened public system, that it will make it unaffordable for many of them, that people who aren't able to get access either through the public system or because they can't afford it in the private system, at worst might go blind. Now, if ever there was a preventive health measure, an effective preventive health measure, it is cataract surgery. Cataract surgery is a life-changing procedure. It helps prevent falls, it helps prevent fractures, it helps prevent mental pressure, it helps prevent social isolation, and it is a very important procedure. Now, the government, through its very ill-considered and short-sighted budget cut, is trying to save $313 per procedure to achieve what? To achieve what? To push those patients into the public system where the taxpayers will have to pay more than $3,500 to fund exactly that same procedure. Now, that is for those people that are lucky enough to get in. Now, we understand that there's been advice floating backwards and forwards. I mean, the health minister has made very clear that she wasn't going to take a constructive approach on this. She sought to frighten patients, she sought to frighten doctors, and she sought to threaten the Senate. So we took very careful advice, we very carefully considered our options, and we had made a decision some time ago to move amendments to the Health Insurance Act to ensure that any disallowance of the Medicare rebate items for cataract surgery would revert to the rebates that are currently in place. And so we knew that we had to do two things. We knew that we had to move an amendment to the Health Insurance Act before we deal with the disallowance motion in relation to those particular items. Now, there were two different ways we could do this. We could do it the sensible way, our preferred way, which would have been to move two amendments to the Health Insurance Amendment Compliance Bill 2009, a bill which the government had given us every indication was a high-priority bill, a bill which they wanted to pass this week, a bill which was time-sensitive. And if the rumours around Parliament House are right, I understand that Minister Chris Bowen is very unhappy with Minister Roxon, because he's now very worried about what is going to happen with his Health Insurance Amendment Compliance Bill. So Minister Roxon, for her own political purposes, for her to be able to maximise the threat to the Senate, for her to be able to maximise her scare campaign towards patients and towards doctors, pulled a stunt at around about 5 p.m. yesterday afternoon. At around about 5 p.m. yesterday afternoon, with seconds to go before the Health Insurance Amendment Compliance Bill was due to pass the House of Representatives, it was deferred just before it was put to a third reading vote. Even though the bill had consideration of the bill had been completed, it had been completed without amendments. So here you've got a bill which was considered in the main committee as non-controversial. Consideration of the bill was finalised without amendments. It goes into the chamber of the House of Representatives. It is about to get passed, and guess what? At the last minute, the government pulls it. And the only reason the government pulled it is because the government wanted to prevent the Senate from taking a sensible, responsible, carefully considered path in terms of moving amendments to the Health Insurance Act. We would not be wasting all this time today if the government had not pulled this stunt. So if the government's legislative programme is out of order today, it is on their head, and I suggest that Minister Ludwig goes and have a close conversation, a careful conversation with Minister Roxon, because she clearly does not understand how this Senate works. She does not understand no for an answer. She does not understand that if she doesn't have majority support in this chamber, she cannot get her way. I mean, this is government arrogance at its worst. I mean, we've seen it before, where the government clearly doesn't have the support of the Senate for a particular course of action, and by hook or by crook, they just try to push it through using every procedural trick in the book. Now, on this particular occasion, we made a decision that this is an important issue for patients across Australia who need timely and affordable access to quality cataract surgery. Timely and affordable access to quality cataract surgery. The government is trying to maximise the threat. The government wanted to maximise the leverage over the Senate by doing what it did last night, and that is, of course, the reason why I, on behalf of the opposition, am moving this particular motion. Now, I won't hold up the Senate too much longer. I think that the point is well made. This is a very important discussion for us to have in the Senate today, and we have the opportunity today to send a very clear message to the government as to what the intentions of the Senate on this are. Because, I mean, here we are. I mean, this is supposed to take effect on Saturday. This is supposed to take effect on Saturday. The government announced this on the 12th or the 13th of May. How many months ago is that? Like June, July, August, September, October. More than 5 months ago the government announced this. And 2 days ago is when the government tabled these regulations with five minutes to midnight to essentially minimise our opportunity as a Senate to scrutinise what the government is doing and to take appropriate remedial action if the Senate does not support what the government is proposing to do. Now, I mean, the minister went out there and said, well, initially she said nothing. And then she said, oh, well, I've got advice that if the opposition does this, the whole item is going to disappear. Now, we understood that we can't just move a disallowance motion in isolation of anything else. Mind you, we understand that. But the government's own departmental officials don't. The senior official in the health department, responsible for this area, responsible for the MBS branch in the department, when I asked her the question, what would happen if the Senate were to disallow this particular cataract surgery-related Medicare rebates, her answer was, well, I think it would revert back to the previous rebates. Now, if there's confusion at the top levels of the government, what chance have we got? But we always knew, contrary to the government, we always knew what our strategy was. We always knew that we needed to do both, move an amendment to the Health Insurance Act, as well as give notice of a motion to disallow and take a vote on that motion. This is the only way we can make it very clearly understood to this arrogant government that the Senate cannot be taken for granted. And hopefully they will learn a lesson from this, and in future treat the Senate and the people we represent with a bit more respect. Because quite frankly, we've got a job to do in this chamber. The government might think that they can steamroll things through this chamber the same way as they can steamroll things through the House of Representatives. Well, guess what? We, every single one of us, represent a great state or a great territory across our great country. And we've got a contribution to make in this chamber, and at the end of the day, when the whole debate is had, we will have a vote. And if a majority of senators support something the government wants to do, it gets up, and if a majority of senators don't support it, it goes down. That is the way democracy works. It is time the government understood this. So, Mr. Acting Deputy President, with those few remarks, I think the Senate is well aware as to what the opposition, together with Senators Feeling and Xenophon, are seeking to achieve. We are seeking to put beyond doubt that if the Senate were of a mind to disallow the reductions in Medicare rebates for cataract surgery when it comes up after this legislation has been dealt with, then our intention is for those items, the rebates for those items, to revert back to the rebates that are currently in place. That is what our intention is. Now, we know that this bill has got to go back to the House of Representatives, and the government will have to make a decision, won't they? The government will have to make a decision whether they will bring on the bill, give it precedence, deal with it and vote in favour of it, or whether the government is going to ignore it, vote against it, or let time pass the 1st of November. And if the government doesn't deal with this before the 1st of November, then it is on their head. The chaos that will be caused out there in the community will be on the government's head. Because clearly the government hasn't thought this through. The government should have engaged with us constructively much earlier. The government should have realised that without the support of the Senate, they will not be able to press ahead, but arrogantly, and I would argue incompetently, the Minister for Health and Ageing thought she could get away with it. But this is an important issue. This is about ensuring timely and affordable access to quality health care for all Australians. And on this basis, this is a very important process for us to go through today.